Matthew 19. Our story begins with Jesus being followed around by a large crowd. He continues to challenge Satan and the demons by cleansing people of demonic possession. In fact, this is the fifth of 5 what we call seasons of vast healing and demon exorcisms. And these are all in Matthew. And to this list we add chapter 19. So does Jesus do this all the time? You get the sense from at least Matthew that it's a regular occurrence that after Matthew 4, when Jesus confronts and defeats Satan in the wilderness, that from then on you have numerous times, probably beyond this, where Jesus is confronting demons. So, by the way, we should ask it now, does Satan or demons, do they know that Jesus, A, will die, or B, that after Jesus does die, or in the event that Jesus dies, what will happen because of it? That's a good question. I'm of the opinion, and I looked at, or I would envision Mel Gibson's Passion movie as getting it, I think, as accurate as I've ever seen it, where, yes, Satan wants to see Jesus die. And it's not until the end of the movie that Satan is surprised by what happens. And so, much like the White Witch in The Lion, Witch, and Wardrobe, where she wants to see Aslan die, not knowing that there would be good to come of it. So my thought is, or at least my, again, test driving of the story of the Bible, is that no one, including any humans or spirits, see a value in a dying Messiah except God and Jesus. The Father and Jesus understand that. But everyone else, including spirits, is left in the dark. In our reading today, we have the divorce challenge, and we also have the rich young ruler. Let's talk about the rich young ruler next time in Mark 10, but today we'll talk about the divorce challenge that the Pharisees bring to Jesus. I think it's important because this issue of divorce is probably one of numerous examples where the Pharisees challenge Jesus or Jesus challenges them on the legitimacy of using Torah to be loyal to Yahweh. That's a very carefully worded way of saying it. Again, can you use Torah to be loyal to the Father? Remember what Jesus will say, and we'll quote his words in a minute. Jesus believes, and this goes back to the entire, really, the Old Testament story in total, you can be loyal to Yahweh absent Torah. Now, we have to be careful how we say that, but when you think of the story and how it goes, you have numerous people who know nothing of Torah. I think of Jonah's Ninevites, or Rahab when she meets the spies from Israel. The idea that you have to use Torah or go through Torah in order to be loyal to Yahweh is, well, that's very Pharisaical, and there's problems with that. And this is the best example, I think, and that's why maybe Matthew and our Gospels record this story, because here is a great example, as carefully worded as you can get, as to why Torah is not the means of loyalty. Jesus can say, I love Torah, but I'm loyal to Yahweh. And there's a difference in how we think of that. Therefore, what God has, and this is Jesus' answer to the question, what about divorce? Therefore, what God has joined together, verse 6, let not man separate. In other words, there's God's opinion. No divorce, ever. And then they say, why then did Moses command to give a certificate of divorce? And that's, of course, in Deuteronomy 24, verses 1 to 4. Jesus said to them, it was because of the hardness of your hearts that Moses permitted you to divorce your wives. By the way, the operating system kind of running behind everything that the Pharisees thought and said is in Luke 16:15, something like this. You are those who justify yourselves before men, but God knows your hearts. And so, yes, they can say, oh, we want to follow Torah, but Jesus is catching them when he says that you are doing it the wrong way because, again, of what God is doing. In the sense, he did this because of permission. Okay, let me quote from John Stott in his book called The Message of the Sermon on the Mount, where he says this about our passage. For our purposes here, it is enough to observe that there is certainly no command in Deuteronomy to a husband to divorce his wife, nor even any encouragement to do so. All there is instead is a reference to certain necessary procedures if a divorce takes place. And therefore, at the very most, a reluctant permission is implied and a current practice is tolerated. Even, and this is where, or the reason I wanted to quote Stott, even the divine concession was in principle inconsistent with the divine institution. And so words like concession, permission, toleration, there are numerous times in Torah where we realize that what God is giving people is not because God wants it to happen, but because God is conceding, tolerating, or giving permission to something. We could add, and I've mentioned this before, but let's talk about it here. We could add polygamy. Deuteronomy 21:15, if a man has 2 wives, here's what you do. We could add slavery to this. Again, these are things that are in Torah, but once you get there, you realize there's things that are in Torah that are not really what God intended, especially if you want to show loyalty. Do you need to have slaves in order to show loyalty to Yahweh? Well, we have in Leviticus 25, 44, and 45 these kind of phrases. You may buy male and female slaves from other nations. They shall become your property. Again, it's not saying you have to, but it is in Torah. We think of holy war or genocide. We come out of this story of Joshua with him being told, of course, by Moses. This is in Deuteronomy 20:16. Those cities that God has given you, let nothing that breathes remain alive. One more, and this is often missed, I believe, sacrifice. The idea that you kill an animal in order to honor Yahweh. I believe that was concession. We have, of course, in Hosea 6, verses 6 through 8, which has been quoted by Jesus already in our gospel accounts. I would rather you obey than sacrifice. Obedience, or I would rather have mercy than sacrifice. So I think Jesus would say to the question, are you a loyal Jew? He would say, absolutely. I'm a loyal Jew in that I love Torah, but I'm loyal to Yahweh. I understand that Torah has its limitations built in because of the hardness of men's hearts. And in fact, I think Jesus would even clarify it this way as he would talk again over those campfires into the night about this very difficult issue of how does God put into his own text, his own Torah, things that he does not necessarily want. I think Jesus would have said something like this. By loyalty, when I speak of loyalty to Yahweh, I'm reading my Torah thus with wisdom, realizing, as you should be realizing as well, that Torah's concessions can lead to your ruin if you are not careful.